The monthly combat tournament at the Galactic Defense Academy was always the most anticipated event on the training calendar, when cadets from different species competed in single elimination matches that tested everything they had learned about warfare strategy and personal combat. The tournament served multiple purposes beyond simple entertainment, as it allowed instructors to evaluate student progress, identify potential leaders, and give cadets experience with the pressure of fighting under observation. This month's tournament would be different from all previous competitions because for the first time in Academy history, several human cadets had advanced far enough in their training to qualify for the main bracket, rather than being relegated to preliminary rounds designed for beginners. The news sent shockwaves through the student body as alien cadets who had expected easy victories found themselves facing opponents they had dismissed as weak and insignificant. The tournament brackets were announced during the morning assembly, and Commander Valix read each pairing aloud, while the assembled cadets listened with growing excitement and anticipation. Most matches featured traditional rivalries between established warrior species, with Korthax facing Vorthons and Kalani fighters taking on Nelith opponents in battles that would showcase the natural advantages each species brought to combat. But one pairing stood out from all the others and caused an immediate uproar among the assembled students. Jiwon Kim, the quiet human cadet who had steadily climbed the class rankings, would face Boren, his massive Korthak roommate, in what everyone recognized as a test case for human participation in elite military units. The announcement was met with cheers from alien cadets who saw this as an opportunity to settle the question of human capabilities. Once and for all, Boren felt the weight of expectation from hundreds of his fellow students as groups of alien cadets gathered around him to offer encouragement and advice. The massive warrior had been selected to represent everything that traditional galactic military culture valued: strength, courage, and the willingness to face enemies in direct combat, without relying on tricks or technology. Your people have been waiting for this moment. One of the Vorthon supremacists told Boren while other alien cadets nodded in agreement. This is your chance to prove that natural superiority cannot be replaced by clever techniques and fancy footwork. Show the humans what real warrior strength looks like. The pressure was intense as cadets placed bets heavily against the human representative, while discussions filled the dormitories, dining halls, and training facilities about what the outcome would mean for the future of human integration into galactic defense forces. Some alien students spoke openly about their expectation that Boren's victory would lead to humans being quietly transferred out of combat roles and into support positions more suited to their limitations. Jiwon found himself largely isolated during the days leading up to the tournament, as even neutral cadets avoided being seen associating with him too closely. The few human supporters worried openly about their representative facing an opponent with such overwhelming physical advantages, while alien cadets made increasingly bold predictions about how quickly the fight would end. The tournament rules allowed for full contact combat, using training weapons that delivered painful energy pulses, capable of causing temporary paralysis, unconsciousness, or in extreme cases, permanent nerve damage. Medical teams would be standing by to intervene if serious injury occurred, but the nature of the competition meant that significant damage was not only possible, but expected. Minji and Hyunwoo tried to offer support and encouragement, but they were as nervous as everyone else about the upcoming match. Hyunwoo was still recovering from his injuries during the sabotage survival exercise, and his breathing remained labored when he spoke for more than a few minutes at a time. You do not have to prove anything to these aliens, Minji told Jiwon during one of their few private conversations. We know what we are capable of, and that should be enough. But Jiwon understood that individual confidence would not be sufficient to change the systematic discrimination that human cadets faced at the academy. Only a public demonstration of human capabilities would earn the respect needed to ensure their future in galactic defense forces. The tournament represented an opportunity that might not come again for years. He spent his preparation time studying recordings of Korthak fighting techniques and analyzing the strengths and weaknesses of opponents who relied primarily on overwhelming physical advantages. Korthak warriors traditionally used their massive size and natural armor to absorb enemy attacks while delivering crushing blows that could disable most opponents with a single strike. The challenge for any opponent facing a Korthak was finding ways to avoid the devastating attacks while delivering enough damage to overcome their natural defenses. Most alien species with sufficient speed tried to strike and retreat repeatedly, while slower opponents attempted to match strength with strength in brutal contests of endurance. Jiwan realized that neither approach would work for a human fighter who lacked both the speed of a Vorthan and the strength of another Korthak. Instead, he would need to rely on precision timing and knowledge of Korthak anatomy to find weaknesses that could be exploited by a smaller, more agile opponent. The days passed quickly as tournament. Fever built throughout the academy, and even the instructors seemed caught up in the excitement of what everyone recognized as a historic moment. Commander Valix made it clear that he expected all cadets to conduct themselves with honor regardless of the outcome, but it was obvious that political implications extended far beyond the academy walls. On the morning of the tournament, Jiwan woke before dawn and went through his usual training routine, while his massive roommate prepared for what everyone expected to be his moment of triumph. Boren seemed confident and relaxed as he checked his equipment and reviewed the combat techniques that had served his people well for thousands of years. The academy arena filled quickly as cadets, instructors, and even some visiting dignitaries took their seats to witness what promised to be a defining moment in human galactic integration. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation and underlying tension that had been building for months between different species and philosophies about military effectiveness. As the preliminary matches began, Jiwan watched carefully to observe how different fighting styles matched up against each other, and noted which techniques seemed most effective in the controlled environment of tournament combat. The energy weapons used in competition were calibrated to deliver maximum pain and temporary incapacitation without causing permanent damage, but they still required respect and careful handling. Crowd grew more excited as the tournament progressed and the time approached for the main event that everyone had come to see. Alien cadets filled the stands while the handful of human supporters sat together in one small section looking nervous, but determined to cheer for their representative. When the announcement came that Boren and Jiwan should report to the arena preparation area, the noise level in the building reached a crescendo that could probably be heard from orbit. The two opponents made their way through corridors lined with cheering alien cadets who offered final words of encouragement to the Korthak warrior, while largely ignoring his human opponent. In the preparation area, each fighter was allowed to select their preferred weapons from the approved tournament arsenal. Boren chose a heavy energy mace that crackled with blue electricity and seemed perfectly suited to his massive frame and fighting style. The weapon was designed to deliver crushing blows that could break bones and cause massive trauma even through protective armor. Jiwan selected a lighter energy blade that hummed softly and felt balanced in his human grip. The weapon was designed for precision strikes rather than raw power and required skill, and timing rather than brute strength to use effectively. The contrast between the two weapons perfectly represented the different approaches each fighter would bring to their confrontation. As they walked toward the arena entrance, Boren looked down at his smaller opponent and spoke for the first time since the tournament pairings had been announced. "I am sorry that it has to be this way, roommate," he said in his deep, rumbling voice. "But some things are bigger than personal friendship." Jiwan nodded and replied in a calm voice that showed no fear or doubt. "I understand, Boren, and I respect you for doing what you think is right. But I have something to prove too, and I will not hold back just because we share living space." The arena doors opened, and the two opponents stepped into the bright lights and thunderous noise that marked the beginning of the most important fight in the history of human participation in galactic military training. The massive doors of the Galactic Defense Academy opened with a deep rumbling sound that echoed across the landing platform, where hundreds of young beings from different worlds stood waiting. The morning sun of Kepler Prime cast long shadows across the ground as transport ships from across the galaxy continued to arrive, bringing new cadets who would train to become the next generation of galactic defenders. Among the crowd of aliens with their strange shapes, colors, and sizes stood a small group of humans who looked remarkably ordinary compared to their fellow recruits. Jiwan Kim adjusted the strap of his travel bag and looked around at the incredible sight before him. Towering, blue-skinned Vorthans with scales that gleamed like metal stood near groups of four-armed Kalani whose movements were so fast they seemed to blur. The massive Korthak warriors made the ground shake with each step, their thick gray skin covered in natural armor that looked stronger than any metal G1 had dreamed of this moment since he was a child back on Earth. When the first news reports showed humans joining the Galactic Alliance, the entrance exams had been the hardest thing he had ever attempted, with tests that pushed his body, mind, and spirit to their absolute limits. Most of the kids from his school who had tried to get into the academy had failed, but somehow Jiwan had managed to pass. Even though his scores were barely high enough to qualify, the human boy standing next to him introduced himself as Hyunwoo and pointed toward a girl with short black hair who was staring up at the academy building with wide eyes. That was Minji, another human cadet who had made it through the brutal selection process. The three of them had never met before, but they already felt connected by the simple fact that they were the only humans in sight among hundreds of alien beings. A loud voice boomed across the landing platform as Commander Valak stepped forward to address the new arrivals. The Rethian officer had silver skin that seemed to glow in the sunlight and bright yellow eyes that looked like they could see right through anyone who tried to lie to him. His uniform was covered with medals and ribbons that told the story of battles fought across the galaxy against enemies that threatened peaceful worlds. "Welcome to the Galactic Defense Academy," Commander Valak said in a voice that carried easily across the crowd. "You have been chosen from millions of candidates across hundreds of worlds because you showed the potential to become defenders of justice and peace in our galaxy. But potential means nothing without hard work, dedication, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for those who cannot protect themselves." The commander began explaining the rules and expectations of academy life, while Jiwan noticed how the different alien species naturally grouped together. Vorthans stood with other Vorthans, while Kalani cadets formed their own clusters, and the massive Korthak seemed to take up space wherever they wanted. The few humans present looked lost and uncertain as they tried to figure out where they belonged in this complex social structure. Some of you may be wondering why we have recently begun accepting humans into our ranks. Commander Valak continued, his yellow eyes seeming to look directly at the human cadets. Earth has joined the Galactic Alliance, and with that membership comes both rights and responsibilities your species brings. Unique perspectives and abilities that we believe will strengthen our collective defense forces. A few alien cadets turned to stare at the humans with expressions that ranged from curiosity to obvious doubt. Jiwan could hear whispered conversations in languages he did not understand, but the tone made it clear that not everyone was happy about having humans at the academy. He kept his face calm and neutral, even though he felt nervous about what lay ahead. The orientation process moved quickly, as cadets were assigned to dormitories given their class schedules and introduced to the basic layout of the massive academy complex. The building stretched as far as the eye could see, with training facilities, weapons ranges, simulation chambers, and libraries that contained the collected military knowledge of dozens of civilizations. When dormitory assignments were announced, Jiwan discovered that he would be sharing a room with a Korthak named Borin. The massive alien warrior stood almost 8 feet tall, with arms as thick as tree trunks and a face that looked like it had been carved from solid rock. When Borin saw his human roommate, he let out a laugh that sounded like stones grinding together. "So the academy is pairing me with one of the new pets," Borin said in a voice so deep it seemed to come from underground. "I hope you do not snore, little human, because Korthak warriors need their sleep before real training begins." Jiwan decided not to respond to the comment and instead focused on unpacking his few belongings in the small space that had been designated as his area of their shared room. The contrast between the two roommates could not have been more obvious, with Borin taking up most of the available space while Jiwan seemed almost invisible in comparison. The first meal in the academy cafeteria was an experience that Jiwan would never forget. Hundreds of different beings sat at long tables eating foods from their home worlds, while conversations in dozens of languages filled the air with a constant buzz of sound. The humans naturally gravitated toward each other, sitting at a small table near one corner of the vast room. Other cadets stared at them openly while making comments that were clearly not friendly. Minji tried to ignore the attention and focus on her food, but it was obvious that she was uncomfortable with being the center of so much negative attention. A group of Vorthon cadets at a nearby table began making jokes about weak humans, who would probably faint during the first day of real training. One of the Vorthons stood up and walked over to the human table with a smile that showed rows of sharp teeth, designed for tearing meat. "Do you three actually think you belong here?" he asked in perfect standard galactic language. "My people have been warriors for thousands of years while yours just discovered space travel a few decades ago." Minji looked up at the blue-scaled alien and spoke in a steady voice that did not show any fear. "We passed the same entrance exams as everyone else, and we are here because we earned our places just like you did." The Vorthon cadet laughed and shook his head, while his friends at the other table joined in the laughter. "You barely passed those exams, human, and everyone knows the standards were lowered to let your kind participate. When real combat training begins, you will learn the difference between academic tests and actual fighting ability." Jiwan watched the exchange carefully while eating his meal and taking note of how the other species interacted with each other. He noticed that even among the aliens there were clear hierarchies based on physical strength, speed, and traditional military reputations. The Korthaks seemed to command respect through pure intimidation, while the Vorthons relied on their speed and agility to maintain their status. After dinner, the cadets were given time to explore the academy facilities before evening curfew. Jiwan walked through the training areas and weapons ranges while observing the different types of equipment designed for various alien physiques. Some of the weapons were so large and heavy that he could barely lift them, while others seemed designed for beings with multiple arms or enhanced reflexes. The day ended with a brief assembly where the cadets learned about the academy ranking system that would determine their future assignments in the Galactic Defense Force. The top graduates would be selected for elite units and prestigious postings, while those who performed poorly might find themselves assigned to cargo ships or remote outposts. As Jiwan lay on his narrow bunk, listening to Boren snore like a freight transport engine, he thought about the challenges that lay ahead. The other humans seemed nice enough, but they were all facing the same problem of proving themselves in an environment designed for species with natural advantages that far exceeded anything humans possessed tomorrow would bring. The first real tests of their abilities, and Jiwan knew that failure was not an option. The dreams of a scared kid from Earth had brought him across the galaxy to this place, and he was determined to show everyone that humans belonged among the defenders of galactic peace and justice. The atmosphere at the Galactic Defense Academy changed dramatically as the second month of training began, and what had started as simple curiosity about human cadets evolved into something much more dangerous. The daily interactions between different species became increasingly hostile, with insults and challenges, replacing the polite conversations that had marked the early days of their time together. Jiwan noticed the change most clearly during meal times, when the great cafeteria began to resemble a battlefield divided along species lines rather than a place where future defenders of galactic peace gathered to share food and friendship. The humans found themselves isolated at their small table, while groups of alien cadets made increasingly bold comments about weak Earthlings who did not belong among real warriors. Boren had begun spending less time in their shared dormitory room, and more time with groups of Korthak and Vorthon cadets who gathered in common areas to complain about the declining standards at the academy. The massive warrior seemed embarrassed by his human roommates' steady progress up the class rankings, and this wounded pride made him receptive to the anti-human sentiment that was spreading through the student body like a disease. The situation became more serious when rumors began circulating that academy instructors were giving human cadets easier assignments and higher grades to make their integration appear successful. These lies had no basis in reality, but they spread quickly among students who were looking for explanations for their own poor performance or reasons to justify their prejudice against the newest member species of the Galactic Alliance. Minji became a particular target of harassment after she scored higher than a group of Vorthon cadets on a complex tactical planning exercise that required students to coordinate multiple units across different environments. Her success was dismissed as luck or favoritism, rather than acknowledged as the result of her natural analytical abilities and countless hours of study and preparation. "You think you are so smart, human girl," one of the Vorthon cadets said during a weapons maintenance session. "But everyone knows. The instructors are going easy on your kind because they feel sorry for you." When real combat comes, you will learn the difference between academy games and actual warfare. Minji looked up from the energy rifle she was calibrating with steady hands, and spoke in a calm voice that did not reveal the anger burning inside her. I earned my scores the same way you did, by working hard and following instructions. If you think the instructors are showing favoritism, then maybe you should spend more time studying and less time making excuses for your own poor performance. The confrontation might have escalated into violence if Instructor Zephon had not chosen that moment to enter the maintenance bay and assign new work details to the arguing cadets. But the incident was noted by other students and added to the growing list of grievances that different groups held against each other. Commander Valix called a special assembly to address the rising tensions between species, and his words carried the weight of authority backed by decades of military experience and countless battles fought to preserve galactic peace. The silver-skinned Rethian officer stood before the assembled cadets with an expression that brooked no argument or dissent. I am disappointed to hear reports of conflicts between cadets based on species rather than individual merit, he said in a voice that echoed throughout the great assembly hall. The Galactic Defense Academy has always been a place where the best and brightest from across the galaxy come together to learn the skills needed to protect innocent beings from those who would do them harm. The commander went on to explain that diversity of species, backgrounds, and perspectives made the Galactic Defense Forces stronger rather than weaker, and that prejudice based on physical appearance or planetary origin had no place among those sworn to defend justice. But his words seemed to have little effect on cadets who had already made up their minds about human inferiority. After the assembly, Jiwan overheard conversations that made it clear many alien cadets viewed the commander's speech as political correctness that ignored obvious realities about combat effectiveness. The Vorthon supremacists in particular seemed energized by what they saw as official weakness and began planning ways to demonstrate that humans could not handle real military challenges. The breaking point came during a survival training exercise in the academies. Environmental simulation chambers where cadets were tested on their ability to operate in hostile conditions that replicated various alien worlds. The exercise required teams of mixed species to work together while dealing with extreme temperatures, toxic atmospheres, and equipment failures. Jiwan's team included himself, Minji Hyunwoo, and 3 alien cadets who made it clear from the beginning that they considered the humans to be dead weight that would prevent the team from achieving a high score. The Kalani team leader assigned the humans to simple tasks, while the aliens handled what they considered to be the important work of navigation and technical operations. Everything went wrong when the team's breathing apparatus began malfunctioning in a simulated toxic atmosphere that would kill unprotected beings within minutes. The aliens immediately secured the functioning equipment for themselves while leaving the humans to deal with faulty gear that was clearly sabotaged. Hyunwoo collapsed, first as his breathing mask failed completely, and toxic gases began affecting his respiratory system. Jiwan and Minji worked frantically to share their own equipment while trying to signal for emergency assistance from the monitoring instructors. The alien team members stood by and watched without offering help, claiming later that they thought it was part of the exercise. Only quick action by Instructor Zephon prevented serious injury or death, as medical teams rushed into the simulation chamber and evacuated the affected cadets to the Academy medical facility. Hyunwoo spent 3 days recovering from toxic gas exposure, while investigators tried to determine how the equipment failures had occurred. The official report labeled the incident as an unfortunate accident caused by equipment malfunction, but everyone involved knew the truth about what had really happened. The sabotage was obvious to anyone who examined the damaged breathing apparatus, but proving deliberate intent was impossible without witnesses willing to testify against their fellow cadets. Jiwan sat beside Hyunwoo's bed in the medical facility and watched his friend struggle with breathing problems that would take weeks to fully heal. The attack had been carefully planned to look like an accident while potentially killing or permanently injuring human cadets who were guilty of nothing more than trying to earn their place among galactic defenders. I should have seen this coming, Hyunwoo whispered through the medical mask that was helping him breathe. We were naive to think that proving ourselves in training exercises would be enough to change their minds about humans. Minji stood at the foot of the bed with tears in her eyes, but her voice was filled with determination rather than despair. They want us to quit and go back to Earth with our tails between our legs, she said. But giving up now would prove that they were right about human weakness. Jiwan felt something cold and hard settle in his chest as he looked at his injured friend and thought about the cadets who had deliberately tried to kill them. The time for hoping that words and official policies would solve their problems was over. Now it was time to show the galaxy exactly what humans were capable of when pushed too far. The Academy administration seemed unable or unwilling to take strong action against the perpetrators, and some instructors clearly favored their alien students over the troublesome humans who were causing so many problems. Commander Valix issued stern warnings about maintaining unity, but his authority was limited when it came to proving crimes that left no physical evidence. That night, Jiwan began preparing for the confrontation he knew was inevitable. Words would not earn humans the respect they needed to survive at the Academy. Only decisive action would demonstrate that Earth warriors deserved their place among the defenders of galactic peace. He started studying combat recordings and analyzing the fighting techniques of every major species represented at the Academy. The other human cadets noticed the change in their quiet classmate as Jiwan became more focused and determined than ever before. He spent extra hours in the IDA training facilities working on techniques that combined elements from different alien martial arts, while developing strategies for overcoming opponents with superior physical advantages. Boren returned to their shared room later each night and seemed uncomfortable with the tension that filled their living space. The massive Korthak warrior had heard the rumors about what really happened during the survival exercise, and part of him felt guilty about his role in encouraging anti-human sentiment among the student body. Maybe the humans are tougher than I thought, Boren muttered to himself one evening while Jiwan practiced combat forms in the small space between their bunks. But the Korthak quickly pushed such thoughts away and reminded himself that physical toughness meant nothing without the natural weapons and armor that real warriors possessed. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine whether humans had a future in the Galactic Defense Academy, and Jiwan knew that when the moment came, he would need to be ready to prove that technique, intelligence, and determination could overcome any advantage the universe might provide to his opponents. The alarm that woke the cadets at dawn sounded like a dying space whale and echoed through the dormitory halls with enough volume to wake the dead. Jiwan rolled out of his bunk and quickly got dressed, while his massive roommate Boren stretched and yawned, showing teeth that looked like they could bite through steel plating. The Korthak warrior seemed completely comfortable with the early morning routine, while Jiwan felt like his body was still trying to catch up with his brain breakfast. In the cafeteria was a rushed affair with cadets grabbing quick meals before hurrying to their first training sessions. The human cadets sat together again, and Jiwan noticed that more alien students were staring at them with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Minji looked tired but determined, while Hyunwoo kept checking his schedule as if he could not believe he was actually here. The first training session took place in Combat Hall 7, a massive chamber with walls that could project holographic environments and floors that could change texture and elevation. At the touch of a button, Instructor Zephon stood at the front of the group, and his appearance was enough to make even the toughest Korthak cadet pay attention. The Nelith warrior had 6 eyes arranged around his skull, razor-sharp claws that could cut through most metals, and scars that told the story of countless battles. Today you will learn the basics of energy weapon combat, Instructor Zephon announced while activating a display that showed different types of galactic standard weapons. These training weapons are set to deliver painful but non-lethal energy pulses that will teach you to avoid getting hit while learning to strike your targets effectively. The instructor demonstrated proper stance grip and firing techniques using movements that were so fast and precise they seemed almost like a deadly dance. Each alien species had natural advantages that made certain techniques easier for them to master. Vorthons could move with incredible speed, while Kalani could attack from multiple angles using all 4 arms simultaneously. When it came time for hands-on practice, Jiwan struggled initially with the alien technology that felt strange and awkward in his human hands. The weapon grips were designed for different finger arrangements, and the targeting systems assumed reaction speeds that humans simply did not possess naturally. Other cadets picked up the techniques quickly, while Jiwan felt like he was fighting against equipment that was never meant for his species. Watch and learn human. One of the Vorthon cadets called out after scoring perfect hits on 3 different targets in rapid succession. "You're clumsy, Fingers are not fast enough for real combat weapons. Instead of getting angry or frustrated, Jiwan decided to use his struggles as a learning opportunity. He carefully observed how each alien species approached the training exercises and began experimenting with combining different techniques. The Vorthan speed methods were too fast for human reflexes, but when mixed with Korthak power techniques and Kalani multi-directional approaches, they created something new and interesting. Instructor Zephon noticed Jiwan's unusual approach and stopped to watch as the human cadet attempted a combination strike that used elements from 3 different alien fighting styles. The technique was rough and unpolished, but it showed creativity and adaptability that impressed the experienced warrior. "Interesting approach, Cadet Kim," the instructor said, while the other students gathered around to see what had caught his attention. "You are creating hybrid techniques instead of trying to master traditional forms over." The following days, Jiwan continued developing his unique fighting style, while the other human cadets began finding their own ways to adapt alien training methods to their natural abilities. Minji showed exceptional skill at tactical analysis and could predict opponent movements by reading subtle behavioral cues, while Hyunwoo demonstrated remarkable endurance that allowed him to outlast opponents who were initially faster and stronger. The academy used a ranking system that was updated daily based on training performance, academic scores, and overall progress. Jiwan was surprised to find himself steadily climbing the rankings, while some of the alien cadets who had seemed naturally superior were struggling with exercises that required flexibility and adaptive thinking. Bourne was having particular difficulties with training exercises that required finesse and precision rather than brute strength. The massive Korthak warrior had always relied on his overwhelming physical advantages, but the academy demanded tactical thinking and creative problem-solving. He watched with growing frustration as his supposedly weak human roommate improved daily, while his own progress remained stagnant. "Why are you getting better at this stuff?" Boren asked one evening after a particularly challenging training session. "I am 10 times stronger than you, and my people have been warriors for thousands of years. But somehow you scored higher than me on the tactical assessment." Jiwan looked up from the training manual he was studying and considered how to answer the question honestly, without making his roommate feel worse. "Maybe it is because humans have to be creative to survive," he said finally. "On Earth, we did not have natural weapons or armor, so we had to learn to use tools and think our way out of dangerous situations." The Korthak warrior shook his massive head and made a sound that might have been laughter or disgust. "My ancestors conquered entire star systems using nothing but strength and courage. Your people hide behind technology and tricks instead of facing enemies directly." "That might be true," Jiwan replied while returning to his studies. "But hiding behind technology and tricks seems to work pretty well when the alternative is getting killed by something bigger and stronger than you are." As the weeks passed, the training became more intense and complex. Cadets were introduced to advanced weapon systems, tactical planning exercises, and combat simulations that tested their ability to work as part of a team. The human cadets continued to adapt and improve, while some of their alien classmates began struggling with the increasing demands of academy life. The daily rankings became a source of tension, as traditional expectations were challenged by unexpected results. Several human cadets were now ranked in the upper half of their class, while some supposedly superior alien warriors found themselves falling behind students who had arrived at the academy expecting easy success based on their natural advantages, were discovering that raw ability meant nothing without discipline, hard work, and the willingness to learn from failure. During weapons maintenance class, Jiwan discovered that his human hands were actually better suited to the delicate work of repairing and calibrating energy weapons than the massive claws and thick fingers of many alien species. This unexpected advantage led to him being assigned as a teaching assistant for other cadets who struggled with the precise mechanical work. The role reversal was obvious to everyone, as alien warriors who could lift incredible weights or move at superhuman speeds came to a human cadet for help with technical skills that required patience and careful attention to detail. Some accepted this reality with good grace, while others clearly resented having to depend on someone they considered inferior. Instructor Zephon made note of these developments in his daily reports to Academy Command. The integration of human cadets was proceeding better than anyone had expected, with the new species showing remarkable adaptability and unique problem-solving abilities that complemented rather than competed with traditional alien military strengths. But not everyone was pleased with these positive developments. A group of Vorthon supremacists began spreading rumors that training standards were being lowered to accommodate weak humans, and that the Academy was abandoning its elite traditions in favor of political correctness. These whispers found fertile ground among cadets who were struggling to maintain their expected positions in the class rankings. The tensions that had been simmering beneath the surface since the first day were beginning to boil over, and G1 could sense that a confrontation was inevitable. The question was not whether conflict would come, but when and how it would unfold. He continued his training with quiet determination, knowing that when the moment arrived, he would need to be ready to prove that humans deserved their place among the defenders of galactic peace. The great arena of the Galactic Defense Academy had never been so quiet as when Instructor Zephon raised his 6 arms to signal the beginning of the most anticipated match in tournament history. Every cadet, instructor, and visitor held their breath as 2 fighters stood facing each other in the center of the combat zone, representing not just their individual skills, but the future of human integration into galactic military forces. Boren looked like a mountain of gray stone and natural armor as he activated his heavy energy mace, which began crackling with blue electricity that cast dancing shadows across his massive frame. The Korthak warrior stood nearly 8 feet tall and weighed close to 400 pounds of solid muscle and bone that had been forged by evolution into the perfect combat machine. His people had conquered entire star systems, using nothing but their overwhelming physical advantages. G1 appeared almost fragile in comparison as he activated his energy blade, which hummed with a soft white glow that seemed peaceful compared to the violent crackling of his opponent's weapon. The human cadet looked calm and focused as he took a ready stance that combined elements from different alien martial arts he had studied during his months at the Academy. The size difference between the 2 opponents was so dramatic that many spectators wondered how the Academy officials had allowed such an uneven match to take place. It looked less like a fair competition and more like an execution, as the massive alien warrior prepared to demonstrate why his species had dominated galactic warfare for millennia. "Begin combat," Instructor Zephon announced, and immediately stepped back to give the fighters room to engage Boren. Wasted no time in launching his attack with a roar that echoed throughout the arena, like thunder rolling across a battlefield. The massive Korthak charged forward with surprising speed for someone so large, his heavy footsteps making the arena floor vibrate as he raised his energy mace high above his head for a crushing downward strike that would have flattened most opponents instantly. The alien cadets in the stands cheered wildly as they saw their champion moving with the devastating power that had made Korthak warriors legendary throughout the galaxy. The attack was perfectly executed, with all of Boren's massive strength focused into a single blow that would end the fight before it truly began and send a clear message about human limitations. But G1 had spent weeks studying his roommates' fighting patterns and analyzing every movement, habit, and preference that Boren had displayed during their shared training sessions. He had watched the big warrior practice his combat forms dozens of times and knew exactly how the Korthak would attack when given the opportunity to end a fight quickly. Instead of retreating or attempting to block the overwhelming assault, G1 stepped forward into the charge with fluid precision that surprised everyone watching. The human cadet moved with perfect timing as he ducked under Boren's swing, while simultaneously driving his energy blade upward in a strike that seemed almost casual in its execution. The arena fell completely silent as G1's blade found its target with surgical precision, hitting a specific point on Boren's thick neck, where the natural armor plates created a small gap that most opponents never noticed or were unable to exploit. The strike delivered maximum energy directly to the Korthak warrior's nervous system, at exactly the right angle and intensity to cause immediate incapacitation. Boren's roar cut off instantly as his massive body went rigid from the nerve strike, and his own forward momentum carried him past his human opponent, who pivoted smoothly aside like a matador avoiding a charging bull. The energy mace flew from the Korthak's nerveless fingers as his legs collapsed beneath him, and he crashed to the arena floor with tremendous force that shook the entire building. The sequence had taken exactly 3 seconds from the moment Boren began his charge until he lay unconscious on the combat area floor. 3 seconds too The aftermath of G1's victory sent shockwaves throughout the Galactic Defense Academy that extended far beyond the arena walls. Word spread quickly through subspace communications to military installations across the galaxy, carrying the news that a human cadet had defeated one of the most physically powerful species in single combat, using only skill and tactical thinking. The 3-second victory became legendary, analyzed and discussed by military strategists who began to reconsider their assumptions about human capabilities. Boren awakened in the medical bay with a changed perspective on his human roommate and humans in general. The precise strike that had defeated him demonstrated a level of tactical analysis and execution that impressed even the proud Korthak warrior. When he returned to their shared quarters, Boren offered a formal apology for his previous behavior and expressed genuine respect for G1's abilities. This dramatic change in attitude from one of the Academy's most vocal anti-human voices influenced many other alien cadets. Commander Valix called another assembly, but this time the atmosphere was completely different as alien cadets listened, with newfound attention when human tactical innovations were discussed. The Academy's instructors began incorporating human-developed techniques into their curriculum, recognizing that Earth's warriors brought unique advantages to galactic defense strategies. Minji and other human cadets found themselves welcomed into training groups that had previously excluded them. The integration challenges did not disappear overnight, but the power dynamic had shifted permanently in favor of mutual respect rather than species-based hierarchy. Human cadets gained confidence knowing that their capabilities had been proven in the most public way possible, while alien cadets learned valuable lessons about underestimating opponents based on physical appearance. The Academy became a more collaborative environment where different species learned from each other's strengths. G1's victory had implications that reached the highest levels of the Galactic Alliance command structure. Military leaders who had questioned humanity's inclusion in elite units began requesting human officers for their commands, particularly for missions requiring tactical flexibility and adaptive thinking. Earth's integration into the galactic community accelerated as other species recognized that humans brought valuable capabilities to interstellar defense efforts. Years later, when G1 had become a decorated officer in the Galactic Defense Force, military historians would mark his 3-second victory as the moment when humanity truly earned its place among the stars. The fight demonstrated that in a galaxy filled with species possessing overwhelming physical advantages, intelligence, adaptability, and precise execution could triumph over raw power. This lesson became fundamental to human military doctrine and inspired generations of Earth's warriors to prove that technique and determination could overcome any challenge the universe presented.